Hi, everyone. Welcome to week number 5. Just a few initial thoughts as we get the week started. First off, you will receive your week 4 DQ feedback by Monday evening, as always. And throughout the week, I'll be taking a look at the auditing your leadership assignment that was due, of course, at the end of week 4, and everyone will have it back likely by Friday at the latest. I'm going to try to get 3 done each evening over the course of the week. So let's transition into week number 5. There are 2 learning outcomes for the week. Examine issues of trust related to taking into account such things as racial, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity of stakeholders, and reflect on the potential barriers to developing trustworthy relationships with stakeholders who may be vulnerable and have been traditionally marginalized. And of course, please take a look at the unit notes for week 5 this week, where it goes into a bit more detail around those learning outcomes and provides a bit more of a framework around that. We have 3 readings for the week. As you're well aware, there's an article by O'Connor and Daniello, and then 2 chapters from our text this week, chapter 5 and chapter 8, that have similar themes. O'Connor and Daniello really advocate within the article for supporting and nurturing local innovation centering on increasing the presence of school community partnerships that focus on improving learning for all children and that address inequalities existing within schools and across communities. That's just a little quote from the article. And as always, my notes, the pieces I highlighted from the articles and the chapters, can be found within the course news and bulletins. Chapter 5 is particular around an investigation or study into how Somali parents with school-age children perceive school efforts to communicate with and involve them as parents. Of course, the article finds, not that surprisingly, a supportive school environment has been identified as a critical element in ensuring the well-being and belonging of children of newcomer communities. And later on, they talk about, through stakeholder engagement, how schools are expected to recognize and respect the aspirations parents have for their children, as well as validate their existing value systems. So sounds easy, but in real time is pretty complex. And then, of course, in chapter 8, they talk about a myriad of barriers to success in schools, such as multiple home and school transitions, add layers of marginalization to an already vulnerable population. And of course, they're talking about children coming out of foster care. And, if we talk about equity, fair isn't always equal. And later on in chapter 8, they talk about the level of support was often determined by the needs of the student. So let's think about how that looks within a stakeholder engagement environment. As always, there's 2 DQs. The first one says, social justice is a fundamental part of a meaningful engagement process. Appropriate and diligent planning and preparation will go a long way in ensuring a socially just process, as the initial engagement is more likely to be successful. What is one step you could take to ensure your organization is inclusive of all stakeholders? So it doesn't need to be a school example, of course. Think about your own organization and literally describe one step. So there's going to be a practical and a theory piece. I suggest starting DQ1 by giving the example and describing one step you could take, but then supporting that through theory and say, the reason this step I think would be appropriate is because, and that's where you could work in the course readings as well as additional readings if you like as well. So just make sure you do a good balance of practice and theory there. The second DQ, many issues will need to be addressed and managed as an organization grows in becoming socially just and engaging with its stakeholders. Existing practices may perpetuate an existing power structure, which could engender a lack of trust and not fully take into account language and other cultural barriers. How could you address systemic issues of inequity in your organization? So think about your own organization. Maybe try to pinpoint 1 or 2 things that you're saying, these are potential issues here around power relations or inequity. Describe them and then talk about a little bit how they could be addressed or how they could be resolved. Same thing as DQ1, describe what you would see as an inequity within the system, suggest a potential solution, but try to weave in some theory there too and say, I think this is a good potential solution because, and that's where the citations come in. So looking forward to see you on the DQs in week 5. And have a great week. If you have any questions, as always, reach out. And we'll see you soon, folks.